too much, but at the state level, we have an association called Feeding New York State, and that is all 10 food banks that are on the board for Feeding New York State, and our advocacy teams meet and talk about the current funding and resources that we need as food banks in total across New York State. And I just wanted to make you aware that the priority from Feeding New York State currently is to ask for an increase in both HIPNAP funding and Nourish New York funding as we continue into 2023, 2024. So, we are advocating for that. If there's anything that we need you to help us do to help support that ask, we will be reaching out to you in the months to come. So stay tuned for more information about that. And sorry, Becky, maybe I stole some of your thunder, but I'm sure you will elaborate even more for me on that piece. And then the other contract piece quickly is I was at the Feeding America Fall Forum at the beginning of October, and we are about to embark on a new contract with Feeding America. So what does that mean for you? Not a lot of change. You'll probably see no change, but there are some changes for us and how we report on service figures and how we measure adequacy of service, that we may change some things, and there should be zero to little impact to you as we do these things. But just wanted to let you know that we are embarking on a new contract with Feeding America, and we'll keep you posted on things, and there should be no impact. But if there is something, you will be the first ones that we reach out to say, hey, this is happening. But the current contract looks to be zero impact for you, and it's really just more for us from a compliance standpoint. And then lastly, before I turn it over to Brian, just, the holidays are upon us. We're at the end of October, which is just crazy to think that we are, 2 months and a week left of 2022, and then we're in 2023. This time of the year is always harder for a lot of families who are already struggling, trying to make ends meet as, heating bills, costs of, the food, the utilities start to go up, and we know that that's happening this year. So we anticipate that the need that you're seeing will increase. So we wanted just to remind you that we are here. We're here to work with you through these times. We are all feeling the impacts of this economic condition that, we're in currently. I think that, from an agency standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I think we all know, cost of gas, cost of food, cost of utilities, we're all feeling that. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. Let us know what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing that the communities need. We can work to secure additional funds or work with you to secure some funds to help the neighbors in your communities. So we want to be that resource. We want to be able to talk through those challenges and help hopefully find a solution so that we can, have a greater impact in the areas where we know that there is extra need right now. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian McManus, our Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Michael and your team, for setting this up, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. So I would like to touch on inventory levels first, because that's been a pretty hot topic lately. When last we met at one of these town halls towards the end of August, the big concern at that time was lower levels of USDA product on hand. And we told you at that time that our our acquisition of USDA would increase steadily through September, October, and November, and into December as well. That is still true. Since we last met, our inventory levels are up by 4,500 cases, and that equates to about 100,000 pounds of food that we've acquired more than has been distributed in that time frame. We expect that trend to continue, so hopefully you are seeing for your program more choices, more options, and a supply of that food that helps people feel better at ease. about that inventory category. Going forward into 2023, as you're probably aware, I think we touched on it last time, the federal government has made an announcement that they are investing more money in that program. We don't know the specifics of how it will come down to us at our facility and then on to you, but we're very optimistic. We know it will be increase in food. We just don't have all the details of it. So right now, the picture of USDA looks very favorable for us. One of the things that is not different from, or another thing that's not different from when we last talked, is that there is not the supply of frozen meat that we had the benefit of having access to a few years back. That still is not going to return at those levels for the same reasons that we talked about before. It's really just a supply issue. It's a market factors that really dictate that. And it's kind of out of our hands, but we will continue to advocate for it because we do know that people, obviously, that's very highly desirable, and it was one of the most popular things. Our purchased goods, same story from last time. We are 7,500 cases further along, where our acquisition has outpaced our distribution in the same time frame, which is about another 40,000 pounds of food available. So hopefully, I know that last time we had some specific questions about items. Canned beans, juices were some of those. I know that those are back in stock in our inventory. And if you have specific items that you're looking for that you're not seeing, we can talk about that at the end, about what the situation around those might be. We are also coming into the holiday season, and there's always interest in what we will have to support people's holiday distributions. Again, we are not in a position to get into a supply of turkeys. It's never an easy item for us to negotiate. We traditionally have not gotten too much into that, and a number of factors, avian flu and supply issues, are driving up the cost of turkeys. So again, we're not going to be purchasing turkeys and using funds to do that this year. Of course, if donated turkeys come available to us, we will acquire them and get them right out. But for a variety of reasons, we are not going to be purchasing them. We will, and we do have some of the, many of the support items that are part of traditional holiday meals. We have cranberry sauce, dehydrated instant potatoes, stuffing mix. We will be getting gravy. And also all of the fresh items that are comprised of traditional holiday meals. So potatoes, apples, celery, onions, sweet potatoes, all of those things will be a steady part of our inventory and able for people to access. Also, I want to touch base again on some retail donation opportunities. We still are seeing interest from new retail donors that are looking for partner agencies in their community to partner with. For any of our agency-enabled pickups, that's generally smaller volume, variety of product. Right now, the average pickup for one of those is around 200 pounds of food. So it's pretty manageable for almost any size agency. And if you are interested in that, we do have the online application available on our website that I can see if Michael will put it in the show notes. But also, please feel free to reach out to me or the guys on our retail team, Peter Ricardo and Nate O'Grady, and we will definitely work with you to see what is the best option to using retail to enhance your pantry or your meal site. And another thing that it's time to touch on as we head into the holidays is winter is coming, inevitably. So please, to keep our team safe and our equipment safe, When weather is inclement, please keep your site cleared if you're expecting a delivery. Yeah, please keep your site cleared. If it's not, we may have to refuse to deliver there because we can't have people getting hurt or getting bogged down and affecting the rest of the delivery. So any questions or concerns about that, please reach out to the agency relations team and they can walk you through any of our delivery policies. In the event of inclement weather, luckily it doesn't often come as a surprise when we're getting bad weather. So it gives us a few days in advance to come up with backup plans if we think our routing is going to be disrupted, and we will get in touch with you ahead of time to make a backup plan if it looks like we can't get all of our trucks out on the road like we hope. So if you are expecting a delivery and you're also seeing that there's some disruptive weather coming, you're going to want to pay attention to communications from us because there's a possibility that that schedule would be altered. I think that's my list of items that I wanted to share with you. Michael, what is the format for question and answer? Are we saving that to the end? We have a question.
Yes, we'll have a general question and answer at the end.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be around. And I believe next up is Becky.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time today just kind of going over some basics and laying the foundation of your knowledge of state and federal programs that directly impact you. So rather than going through the laundry list and the overall explanation of all of the federal nutrition programs, I thought just in the interest of time, we would just talk about 3 of the main ones that directly impact your agency and your day-to-day operations. So starting with HIPNAP, believe it or not, HIPNAP was established in 1984, so even prior to Food Bank of Central New York's establishment. And the goal of that is to provide nutritional foods to those in need in New York State. And for those of you who have been involved in perhaps volunteering at an anti-hunger program or a food pantry or a soup kitchen in another state, you'll recognize that New York stands out as one of the states that really supports anti-hunger programming, and HIPNAP is definitely one of the better funded programs and has resulted in New York State emergency food programs having a really strong foundation and well-supported infrastructure. So with that, HIPNAP is funded every year through the state budget process. So we advocate for that state funding on an annual basis. But as Karen touched on earlier, our contract with HIPNAP through New York State Department of Health is on a 5-year cycle. So even though we have that contract in place every year, we still have to continue to work with our elected officials to make sure that the funding is appropriated, or the check is actually cut for the dollar amount that we've been awarded. And then we in turn allocate those funds out to you through the grant process that Michael oversees. And as a result of that, you receive funding for food as well as infrastructure support and operation support and equipment. So whether that's helping with your staffing or rental of your space, providing support for utilities. So for example, if in years past you've gotten funding to pay for new refrigerators or freezers, we know that that's going to result in a higher utility cost. So you can apply for state funding to help offset those expenses. So we're very fortunate in New York State to have HIPNAP. The other program that I wanted to touch on through New York State is Nourish New York. This came about as a result of a response to some of the needs that came up during the pandemic. And we're very fortunate that Nourish became permanent Initially, it was intended to be a temporary program in response to COVID. Excuse me. So we were very happy to see the program to be made permanent and continue supporting local food producers so that we can in turn support the agriculture community by taking those commodities, using state dollars, and then using the food bank network, which is already in place, and getting those commodities out to help people in need. So it's a really wonderful program, and we're thrilled that it's been made permanent, and we've been continuously working on increasing the funding level for that. It does have a lot of support because it has been tremendously effective and very popular, as I'm sure all of you are aware, as to the great commodities that we're seeing through that. And then on the federal level, we frequently talk about TFAP and USDA. It's very easy to use these terms interchangeably, and I tend to do that. So just please know that I'm talking about the exact same program when I say TFAP or USDA. So on the federal level, the actual name of the program is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP, and it's administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. So on our menu and how we frequently refer to it is USDA here. So there's three main components to USDA and TFAP. There's storage and distribution, there's mandatory funding, and there's bonus commodities. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because Brian did such a great job during the last town hall. And I'm going to make a general assumption that a lot of you were able to make that call, but I'm still going to do a quick overview. So storage and distribution are dollars that go to Food Bank of Central New York directly because we are the TFAP contract holder, and that's to help us offset the cost of actually storing the food in our warehouse and then transporting it to you. There are costs associated with that that we take on, and because you're receiving the food at no cost to you, we're absorbing some of that. So as a result, we receive dollars from the federal government for that. That is funded through the budget process every year. And I really wanted to focus a little bit more on this just because of some of the communications we've been receiving and questions that we've been receiving from some of our partner agencies around some recent advocacy efforts around this. So in the Farm Bill, which outlines TFAP, there are suggested funding levels, and the storage and distribution funding has never been fully funded. So it's authorized at $100 million in the Farm Bill, and it's never actually been funded at that amount. So you may have seen some communications recently saying that TFAP is not being funded. That is not the case. Really, it's alluding to the fact that we are continually advocating every year as part of the federal budget cycle to fully fund those storage and distribution dollars. We're getting really close, especially over the last few years. We've had some tremendous successes in that area and seen those increases. But I want to assure you that there has not been an impact to food funding. In the Farm Bill, there's mandatory funding for those commodities. So there's that baseline funding that has to get authorized every year to maintain a base level of food coming through TFAP, and that has not been impacted. So while we are seeing a couple of hiccups in the supply chain, it does not mean that food funding has been cut. So I just want to assure you of that. Additionally, there's something called bonus commodities, and Brian touched on this in the last town hall as well. So those are commodities that are at the discretion of the Secretary of Agriculture. So a good example is apples. So say there's a bumper crop of apples one year, and because there is a tremendous amount of supply, the price of apples drops because supply is exceeding demand. So what can happen is the federal government can step in at the discretion of the Secretary of Agriculture and purchase a drastic quantity of that product to help balance the price. And what will happen is we will see apples and apple products coming through TFAP. So that's the bonus commodity piece. So the intent of that is to help stabilize the agriculture market. So you're benefiting the producers and the farmers and the processors while simultaneously aiding individuals and families in need. So very similar to Nourish New York in a way. So those, as a result of that, we might see apple juice, applesauce, fresh apples, all sorts of different things. So that's how bonus commodities work. So those are really the three programs I wanted to focus on in terms of what directly impacts you and through your membership with the Food Bank of Central New York that are both on the state level and on the federal level. And I just wanted to touch on that just because there are times when I hear programs say that we don't get any government support, and I die a little bit inside when I hear that, because you do. So you get a lot of support. So if you ever have questions on those, please feel free to reach out. So with that, I wanted to highlight some of the recent successes that we've had, and we've had quite a few. So for those of you who are HIPNAP agencies and have received those HIPNAP legislative funds, that was as a result of significant advocacy efforts on the state level through that partnership that Karen talked about with Feeding New York State. So myself and our fellow advocates and a lot of folks around the state worked very hard during the last state budget cycle to secure additional funding for HIPNAP. We increased HIPNAP by $22 million, which was originally funded at $34.5 million. So a drastic increase. And I think that those of you who have received the funds are pretty appreciative of that. So this is going to require a lot of legwork going into the next state budget cycle, which I'll touch on in a moment, and how you can help. Additionally, with TFAP, as Brian mentioned, there was an announcement of additional TFAP funding. So just to put that in perspective, the announcement was an additional funding amount of $1.5 billion, that's with a B, dollars going into TFAP. And to level that out and help you understand how significant that is, TFAP during this current fiscal year is funded at $446 million with an M. So $1.5 billion investment that's going to be coming through that program in the next year is tremendous. And again, that's as a result of advocacy on the federal level and saying we need more commodities, we need more assistance, we need to make sure that you all are able to continue meeting the need and what we're seeing on the ground level. Additionally, another win that was as a result of advocacy that you may not have been aware of all of the background to it is the changes to the USDA or the TFAP income guidelines. So on the intake process, I know that you've seen some fluctuations in terms of those income thresholds. And we were very recently able to secure getting those raised to 225% of the federal poverty level, when there was an expectation it was going to be. And initially, it was proposed to be dropped back down to 185%. So what that means is that more households are eligible to receive USDA commodities or TFAP than otherwise would have been. And that was as a result of a lot of people on the state level really working to push to make sure that more people can access those nutritious foods. And additionally, you know, as Brian also alluded to, USDA is definitely listening to our concerns about TFAP commodities and, you know, the types of products that are in demand. They know what folks want, what folks need, and they're working to do the best that they can to meet that need, while also simultaneously they're facing similar issues that we all are in terms of access and products. So your feedback is always very helpful because that does get communicated up the chain. So with all of that said, the reason I wanted to focus on those huge advocacy wins that are helping you meet the need and that are helping the folks that are accessing your programs is to hopefully pep you up to get more involved and more engaged, because we've got we've got a lot happening in the coming months and a lot of opportunities that you can get involved in and engaged in, and simple steps that you can take to really help both your program as well as the people that you're serving. So with HIPNAP, I mentioned that additional $22 million that we secured for the statewide. There is not a guarantee that we will see that in this next budget cycle. Actually, we're working uphill on this one. So it is going to be absolutely critical that our state elected officials hear from you and hear just how much those dollars have helped you to continue doing your work. So please stay tuned for opportunities coming through the food bank and from myself to give you those chances to reach out and share just how important those additional dollars were, because that is our main goal this year, is to secure that and maintain that additional $22 million. Additionally, we're working on increasing funding for Nourish New York. So while the program was made permanent, and we were happy to have the flat funded last year, so that means maintaining funding, that was great. This year we want to push for additional funds. So just between HIPNAP and Nourish, recognizing the cost of food increases, the inflation impacts on households, just all of the different dynamics that are impacting the people that we're serving and what you're seeing on the ground level, and making sure that we're able to continue meeting the need. And on the federal level, we also have a lot happening there. So I mentioned those TFAP admin dollars. So those are the funds that actually help us at the food bank offset our expenses to make sure that you are getting those USDA commodities. We're continuously pushing for that to come through in the federal budget. So we're hoping to see a new budget passed by December 16th. They passed what's called a continuing resolution, so it's kind of changing the deadline of when the budget has to be passed. So there will be opportunities around that. And then additionally, we have the Farm Bill coming up, and that authorizes and designates the structure around SNAP, as well as TFAP. And then child nutrition reauthorization. So those are all of the federal child nutrition programs. There's just a lot happening, and the timing is going to get very interesting just based on post-election. Additionally, and this is something that I'm sure will be interesting to many of you who are serving households with children, many of them have been impacted by the expiration of one of the programs that was as a result of COVID, that provided universal free school meals to children. Unless the school district has opted in and meets the criteria to continue providing universal school meals, many schools have had to revert back to charging for school breakfast and school lunch unless the household has been certified as income eligible. What we are doing is pushing for legislation to be passed on the state level that would provide for universal school meals. We know what an impact this has on families. We know how successful this is. We know the benefits of this. We saw it as a result of COVID. So we want to push New York State to opt in and create and set aside funding for this. That is going to be another uphill battle because it is a very expensive undertaking. So I can't impress upon you enough just how important your advocacy efforts are, and how strong and powerful your voices are and can be. We've got a lot on our plates, but we can certainly do it. And as Karen mentioned, we've got 10 food banks that are part of Feeding New York State. We need more than 10 voices. The 10 of us that are doing the advocacy work can't do it alone, and we definitely need your help. So one of the first things that you can do, and those of you who are at the conference hopefully got one of these fun slips in your folder to encourage you to look up your new legislative districts. So as I'm sure you're all aware of, and you've seen enough commercials to want to pull your hair out, the election is coming up in a couple of weeks. So after that, you may have new elected officials, you may be in a new legislative district. So I strongly encourage you to look up your food pantry, your soup kitchen, or your programs, new legislative districts, and after the election, reach out to your new legislators. It could be as simple as just sending them an introduction letter and telling them about your program and the services you provide and inviting them for a tour, and just getting your name out there and your presence established with them. I would encourage you to follow us on social media when we have advocacy opportunities. That's frequently the fastest and easiest way for us to get those out there. Most of the time they are opportunities that if it's posted on social media, it's for the general public. So it can be you as a pantry coordinator, it could be your guests who are accessing your program for food, it can be your friends and family. So please take advantage of that. Please share that out. If you get an email from me, that is typically something that is program specific. So the intent of the messaging is to come from a program that is operating either HIPNAP or TFAP. So please make sure that I know that sometimes you get a lot of communications from us. We try to be very strategic about what we're sending out so we're not inundating you. And I try to be very conscientious of that, but please, please, please keep an eye on those and please make sure to read them. And if you can, please take action. We're also revamping the advocacy landing page on our website to make it more user-friendly and to have it established and set up with very simple advocacy opportunities, so linking to that. And again, I say this a lot and I really truly mean it. If you ever have questions, please reach out to me. A component of my responsibilities here is to help you when it comes to advocacy and policy. So if you have questions about legislation, you can contact me. If you want to know what action steps you can take, or if you have somehow wrangled an elected official to come visit your program and now you're like, I don't know what to do, I can walk you through that. I'm more than willing to help out, and no question is too small or too silly. So please don't be afraid to ask and reach out to me. I am here to help you, and I'm here to help us make sure that these programs are fully funded, if not boosting and strengthening them. So with that, I will turn it over to Michael for Q&A.
All right,
Michael,
thank you, Becky. Oh,
before
sorry,
we go to questions, can I just really quickly say that, it's an amazing team here, and I hope as you all heard from Becky and heard the numbers and the information, her area of work is really that quiet behind the scenes, doesn't get a lot of spotlight a lot of times, but the work that she is doing every day, advocating, like she said, for the continuation, but then also the increased levels of these programming pieces are so important and critical to our work. So Becky, thank you. I know how hard you've been working, especially these past couple of years, for everything that has impacted our communities and the work that we're doing. And when she says no question is too small or too silly, she's not kidding, because if she could help me understand a lot of this at a whole different level, trust me, she is there to help you learn it at that same level. So please, she puts it into layman's terms. She helps walk you through so that you understand. And I'm very thankful that Becky is here leading us in this work and helping New York State lead this work as we look at our priorities across the state. So thank you, Becky. Okay, Michael, question time.
no problem. Yes, so let's start out. Are there any questions for Becky? I didn't see any come through in the chat boxes. So are there any questions for Becky before we start on general questions? Becky, you might want to share that with all attendees. Becky's going to send out a link, everyone, for you to check your district, your new election districts here in New York State. So, all right. Well, thank you, Becky. Yes, definitely work is much appreciated by those of us that see the results. So thank you. We have a couple of questions. I'm going to answer a couple, and then there's a couple I'm going to send over to Brian McManus to answer. The first one is something that Becky had chatted about, the legislative funds. I received a couple of questions before today's meeting about what the legislative funds were eligible for. So the legislative funds are part of the HIPNAP program, so they are applied to any item with the asterisks on the menu. So as you're looking at your menu and deciding which items to purchase, it's those items that qualify as nutritious by the Hunger Prevention Nutrition Assistance Program, HEPNAP. And it is, so those are items that will also be covered by the legislative funds. As a side note, your legislative funds will be applied before your regular HIPNAP funds are applied, just to help keep us on the right timeline with that. Those legislative funds have to be used by February 28th or so, by the partner agencies. So that's question number one. Question number two, I'm gonna have to refer to Brian. I think I know the answer to this, but I think Brian McManus can probably describe it better. Why are the milk certificate or milk cards no longer free?
I believe that you are referring to milk vouchers that we had available to order through our online ordering system, that you're correct, at one time were at no cost because they were covered by HIPNAP. So HIPNAP will cover a certain amount of dairy items, and one of the eligible categories at one time was milk vouchers. And so we knew they were popular. It was a program that worked well because we thought it worked well because it eliminated the concerns about short-coded milk dating or anything like that. There's some logistical issues with storing milk at the pantry and having people carry it home. So at one time, we believed, in HIPNAP also agreed that this was a viable option, and they were willing to cover the cost of those. Then they changed their policy for that. So previously, the milk vouchers were covered, and you could just order them. You distributed them. We paid either Stewart's or Byrne Dairy or Upstate, which is who we contracted with to do those. And that was the end of it. And then HIPNAP changed their policy, and this is the New York State Department of Health, so that they would only pay for milk that was actually claimed. So they no longer were going to pay for the voucher at the point of purchase and then not follow up on it. They would only pay at the point that the customer redeemed the coupon and received the milk, which I can't argue with that. I support that as well. So the first barrier became, what of those vendors that we work with even had the capability to do that? And Stewart's did not. They said right off the bat, we don't track that, we can't do it. I believe Byrne Dairy, if memory serves me correct, could, and I'm certain that Upstate Farms could do that. And so we set about getting that process in place so that yes, you were still receiving free milk vouchers and distributing them, and then we were only paying the redemption rate, which seemed like a good arrangement for everyone. The redemption rates were extremely low. The last time we did it, the redemption rate of coupons that were distributed was 22%. So at that point, we had to start questioning just how effective is this program even, because we had the hard data that even though I'm sure everyone was giving them out at their programs and people were taking them probably with the intent to cash them in, the reality was they weren't doing it for one reason or another. And what also came about around the same time is the increased production of what is known as UHT fresh fluid milk, which is ultra high temp, which is just a processing step that allows for much longer, safe, enjoyable storage time. So whereas before, when we would be purchasing fluid milk, we may have code dating from the time we got it in our hands of 2 weeks at the most. And, you know, there's lag time with our ordering system and with delivery. So that perhaps wasn't the most efficient method, but now that dating is months out. So what we do have consistently, it does run out and then we have to reorder, is free fresh fluid milk with very favorable code dating available on the menu. We still do have the Stewart's coupons available, and we continue to stock those because the feedback has been that people want to continue to provide them. But like I said, Stewart's does not have the capability to report on redemption rate or bill us just for redemption rate. So we don't know. We don't know how efficient it is. We trust that if you're hearing from your clients, then there is that desire for them. And as long as that's the case and people feel it's a good program, we're going to continue to assist with that, but it is not covered by any grant whatsoever. So it would be impossible for us to make that at no cost. And that's the story of milk vouchers and where we are now. Does that even, hopefully that was the question. Okay.
Yes, Brian, thank you. That was the question.
Okay.
All right, next question. There's no soup on the menu. This was mentioned at the last meeting, and there still is no soup available.
Okay, so soup is kind of a similar story, that at one point, a lot of soups were not qualified as a meal under the nutrition guidelines and fell outside of the realm of HIPNAP. But the way that we buy soup is largely through opportunity. So our purchaser, he's looking for opportunities to acquire affordable, desirable soups that are going to fit with people. What history has shown us that people want, that the clients want, and that you want. But it is not at this point an automatic reorder thing. So when he's able to find one of these deals or several of these deals that he thinks is appropriate, that history has demonstrated fit that criteria, that this is going to work, people are going to order this, their clients are going to take it, they're going to enjoy it, he'll get it. He'll bring the soup in, but it just hasn't been a consistent thing. We can always revisit it. That's one of the benefits of these town halls. Is that he and I will talk about soup when we meet this week, and we'll see if there's some other options to make available.
All right, thank you, Brian. Let's see. There's a couple of other questions that I think I can probably answer. Can smaller pantries share produce from the food bank? And the produce sharing is a yes, because it is a perishable item, and we know a lot of the smaller programs are open once or twice a week, and then they may not distribute all their produce. So the answer is yes. If you have leftover produce that will go bad before your next opening, please do share produce. I really have to caution you strongly, though. We are not allowed to share USDA products. USDA products follow a different set of rules. So if there's a concern about a USDA product, please contact the agency relations team. However, if it's just regular old-fashioned produce from the farmer, from the food bank, certainly we do not want it to go to waste. So let's use that in the best possible way that we can. Another question related to what level of protein makes a canned food a protein source. and that is according to the New York State Department of Health, the HEPNAP program, a canned item is a protein if it has 7 grams of protein in the canned item, and that's confusingly only if it's a mixed item. So for example, if it's a beef stew or something along those lines, it has to have 7 grams of protein or more. Or a chicken noodle soup even has to have 7 grams of protein per serving or more. However, there are some protein-based items that do have less than 7 grams of protein per serving, but they are considered complete proteins, so there's no question. So milk, dairy items, meat products, those we don't have to worry about those 7 grams per serving. And beans, of course. Beans I know sometimes have less than 7 grams per serving, but they are considered a complete protein, so they can be counted as a protein or a vegetable. They're kind of flexible that way. And I know, speaking of beans, there was a question about having beans available. Brian, any update on the bean situation?
I believe that we have received USDA canned beans. Yes, kidney beans canned are available and on the menu. Dried beans, we were able to stock some Nourish New York grown dried black beans that it was popular. People liked it. I think we talked about it on the last town hall. They've since been all ordered, and we will look to acquire more, but it's a very small producer, and we are a little bit at the whim of what they're able to do. So it's not something that we can just have in here the minute that it's required. And again, we will, everything that we hear from this, we'll bring back to the table and look at it. We always consider what is past history with an item, so that we can gauge what is an appropriate volume to have on hand. But also we're aware that things change. You know, a few years ago, I'm sure many of you remember that we were very flush with dried beans, to the point that you were hearing from one or more of us regularly asking you, how many more dried beans can you take? I did not think at that time that people would be saying, well, where's all the dried beans? But they are. And so demand may have changed. I mean, we always felt it was a good product. I would love it if people were accessing dried beans. So I'm on your side with that one. And our purchaser and I will see what we can do. Definitely knowing that that the item is popular makes us more likely to acquire it through USDA if and when it's offered, which I think it will be more frequently. So we hope to have that as a more stable item. We are working on it. Just the available choices make it something that requires some thought to go into. But we hear you.
Yeah, who knew the beans thing, right? And there was a question about the produce awards and the documentation piece. So if you have a HEPNAP operations support or local produce award, we do not have a website to submit the forms to this year. The forms did go out with the checks this year for documentation pieces, and the forms, additional forms, if you need them, are available on our website. And then let's see. Is there a timeline for service insights? Amalia, you want to field that question?
Sure. We're looking at January. We are in the process right now of notifying agencies for our pilot. We'll be testing out with a select number of agencies and rolling from there. So anybody who said they were interested, you will be contacted by email. if you haven't been contacted already. So we're getting it rolling. Very excited.
Awesome, thank you. And then when will Food Bank be going to electronic payment for monthly statements? Next question.
Can you ask that again? What was that question?
The question is, when will Food Bank be going to electronic payments for monthly statements?
I don't know if anybody here has that answer. We may have to reach out to finance and get back to whoever asked that question. So sorry. Yeah, I don't know that answer. Does anybody else here? Okay.
I do not. I know there's a lot of IRS considerations and fun things related to that. So
Yeah, so let me, I will check with our CFO and Michael, if you can document who asked that, we can make sure that we email them. And then
Sure.
also just email the agencies in total, but at least make sure that we're responding. Okay. Thank you.
all right, and then we have one last question. Before we round out the day, what would be one piece of advice, one piece or more of advice you would give to a leadership team who has not seen a full winter of a high demand at their pantry? That's a very good question. So I'll jump in first. You know, my first suggestion is to maintain your communication lines with us here at the food bank. I mean, if you see a huge increase week over week, month over month, certainly reach out to us. It does take some time to make changes, so we can swing into action, but we've got to sometimes have a little bit of lead time to ramp things up and get that going. So I would say that my number one piece of advice would just be to stay in contact with us and let us know what's going on if that's the situation in your program.
That's the best answer. You're not alone, so please just keep that in mind, and yeah, let us know what you're facing, everyone.
Sorry, it helps if I unmute myself. All right, folks, we're just at 4:01, and I wanted to thank everybody for attending today, and I want to thank our panelists for sharing the information. I think we're much better together, obviously, and if we know what's going on, we can take a unified approach to the work that we're doing in our communities. So thanks everyone for attending. If you did have a question we didn't get to, please drop me an email. I can be found on the website. Drop me an email and I'll see if we can answer it real quickly for you. So thanks again, and I hope everyone has a fantastic evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.